Top 10 Murderous Wives Ever. Welcome back to Odd Occasions, where we delve into the strange, the dark, and the mysterious. Throughout history, there have been stories of women who crossed lines that few of us would dare even imagine. Today, we're exploring 10 chilling cases of wives who turned on their loved ones, driven by motives ranging from jealousy and revenge to pure greed. Join us as we uncover the deadly tales of the world's most infamous Black Widows, wives who killed in cold blood. Are you ready to venture into these shocking stories? Let's begin. Number 10. Chisako Kakehi. Born on November 28, 1946, Kakehi was a Japanese woman who murdered at least 4 men. They were all her husbands, each one. Kakehi, dubbed the Black Widow by Japanese media, hunted for her victims on dating websites. She had a strict set of criteria: wealthy, childless, elderly, and lonely. Once she lured them in, she would poison them with cyanide, slipping it into their drinks, or even hiding it in medicine capsules. Her motive? Cold, hard cash. Over time, she managed to collect $12 million in insurance and inheritance payments. But poor investments drained her wealth, leaving her in debt. In 2017, after the death of her 4th husband, only 1 month after they married, Kakehi was finally caught. She confessed, saying she killed him because he gave money to other women, but never a penny to her. Sentenced to death, Chisako Kakehi remains one of the most notorious female killers in Japan's recent history. Number 9. Evelyn Dick. Born on October 13, 1920, her story is one of the most sensationalized cases in Canadian crime history. They called her the Torso Murderer. In 1944, a group of schoolchildren made a gruesome discovery in the woods. They stumbled upon the torso of Evelyn's missing husband, John Dick. He was a streetcar driver, and his head and arms were missing. Authorities later found that his body parts had been burned, right in the furnace of their own home. Suspicion quickly fell on Evelyn, and in 1946, she was convicted of his murder, sentenced to death by hanging. But the story didn't end there. Her lawyer appealed the case, and Evelyn was acquitted. Then, another dark twist. Authorities discovered the remains of her baby boy, encased in cement, under the floorboards of her home. Once again, Evelyn was back in court, charged with murder. This time, she received an 11-year prison sentence. She was released in 1958 and then disappeared into a new life, granted a new identity. With her case record sealed by what was essentially a royal pardon, no one knows what became of Evelyn Dick after that. She vanished, as mysteriously as she appeared. Number 8. Betty Lou Beets. Born on March 12, 1937, she would go down as one of Texas's most infamous Black Widows. Betty Lou was married a total of 6 times, even twice to the same man, and twice she attempted to murder her husbands. The first was Bill Lane. She shot him in the back of the head, twice. Although they divorced after the incident, they remarried, only to separate once more. Later, she tried to run over her 3rd husband, Ronnie Threlkeld, with her car. Both of these men would eventually testify against her in court. In 1983, Betty Lou reported her 6th husband, Jimmy Don Beets, missing. But as authorities dug deeper, they found a disturbing plot. Betty Lou had instructed her son, Robert, to leave the house, saying she planned to kill Jimmy. She then asked Robert to help cover up the murder. Together, they hid Jimmy's body in the front yard and planted his heart medication on his boat, which was abandoned on a lake, making it seem as though he had fallen overboard and drowned. Despite a thorough search of the lake, Jimmy's body was never found. But after a search warrant was issued, investigators uncovered the remains of Jimmy Don Beets and Doyle Wayne Barker, another former husband, both buried on her property. Following her arrest, Betty Lou Beets received a lethal injection death sentence. She was one of the few women to have her sentence carried out by the state of Texas on February 24, 2000. Number 7. Stacey Castor. Born on July 24, 1967, her actions would earn her the chilling nickname, the Black Widow. In 2005, Stacey murdered her husband, David Castor, using antifreeze, a poison that's odorless and colorless. 2 years later, in 2007, she attempted to murder her own daughter, Ashley Wallace, by slipping pills into her drink. Suspicion also fell on her regarding the death of her first husband, Michael Wallace, whose body was exhumed, revealing traces of antifreeze crystals, a deadly signature. Initially, the coroner ruled David Castor's death a suicide, suspecting he'd ingested the antifreeze himself. But soon, evidence began to point elsewhere. Stacey's fingerprints were found on the antifreeze bottle. Investigators also discovered a turkey baster in the trash, leading them to suspect she may have force-fed David the poison. By 2009, Stacey Castor was convicted of murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to 51 years in prison, where she died of a heart attack in 2016. Her case remains a haunting reminder of how trust can be twisted and how deadly intentions can lurk in the shadows of family life. Number 6. Belle Gunness. Born on November 11, 1859, she would become one of America's most notorious female killers, luring suitors to her Indiana farm with promises of marriage and a warm welcome, only to murder them in cold blood. Her grim secrets were revealed after a mysterious fire consumed her farmhouse, with Belle and her children supposedly trapped inside. When authorities arrived to investigate, they noticed unusual depressions in the ground surrounding her property. Digging into the first one, they uncovered a bag, filled with human remains. As they continued, they found more of these burial sites, each containing a sack of dismembered bodies. 5 bags were uncovered on the first day, 6 more on the second. Eventually, the police simply stopped counting. To this day, the exact number of Belle's victims remains uncertain. Estimates suggest she may have killed up to 40 people. Although she was declared dead in the house fire, rumors have circulated for decades that Belle Gunness escaped the flames. Some claim to have seen her in Chicago, living under an assumed identity, leaving her twisted legacy to linger on in mystery. Number 5. Mary Ann Cotton. Born on October 31, 1832, she became England's most infamous female serial killer, leaving a trail of death and suspicion in her wake. Mary Ann is believed to have murdered 3 of her 4 husbands, each time collecting on their life insurance policies. Her method was simple, yet cruel: arsenic poisoning. One by one, her husbands fell ill with severe gastric symptoms, and each time they eventually passed away, leaving Mary with a tidy sum of insurance money. But it wasn't until the death of her young stepson, Charles Edward Cotton, that her dark deeds finally caught up with her. Charles was considered a sickly boy, and Mary claimed she tried to help him by giving him arrowroot, a common treatment at the time. However, when local newspapers caught wind of this case, they discovered a disturbing pattern. Mary Ann had lost 3 husbands, a lover, and 11 children, all from stomach issues. Suspicions mounted. An autopsy on Charles's body revealed traces of arsenic, and soon Mary was arrested. In 1873, she was found guilty and hanged for her crimes, leaving behind a legacy of death, and a chilling reminder of what greed can drive a person to do. Number 4. Nannie Doss. Born on November 4, 1905, she would go on to earn chilling nicknames like the Giggling Granny and the Self-Made Widow, all while leaving a string of bodies behind. Nannie's story began with her first marriage at 16 to Charlie Braggs. Together, they had 4 children, two of whom died under mysterious circumstances, suspected to be food poisoning. After the marriage ended in divorce, Nannie moved on quickly to Robert Franklin Harrelson. That marriage lasted 16 years, until one fateful day, when he raped her. In response, Nannie poisoned him with rat poison. Her third husband, Arlie Lanning, also died under suspicious circumstances, reportedly from a heart attack. Soon after, she poisoned her own mother, then moved on to her fourth husband, Richard Morton, who met the same fate. Finally, after marrying Samuel Doss, her murderous spree came to an end. When Samuel passed, an autopsy revealed lethal amounts of arsenic in his system. Authorities arrested Nannie, and she was sentenced to life in prison. There she lived out her days until she succumbed to leukemia in 1965. Through it all, Nannie remained unsettlingly cheerful, even laughing during her confessions, forever cementing her reputation as one of the most unnerving female killers in American history. Number 3. Amy Duggan Archer-Gilligan. Born on October 31, 1873, Amy would go on to exploit the most vulnerable, those in her care. Amy operated a nursing home, the Archer Home for the Elderly and Infirm, originally founded by her husband, James Archer. But tragedy struck when James died suddenly of what was deemed Bright's disease, a kidney disorder. Just weeks before his death, Amy had taken out a life insurance policy on him, which allowed her to continue running the Archer home alone. It wasn't long before she remarried, this time to Michael W. Gilligan. He died just 3 months later, supposedly from severe indigestion. Between 1911 and 1916, a shocking number of deaths occurred at the Archer home, 48 residents to be exact. But it was the death of Franklin R. Andrews that finally drew suspicion. His family, especially his sister Nellie Pierce, noticed something was wrong. She raised her concerns with the media, and soon articles about the suspicious deaths began circulating. A year later, Amy was arrested. Investigators exhumed the bodies of former residents and found that many had been poisoned with arsenic or strychnine. Amy was sentenced to death, but after a plea of insanity, she was committed to a mental facility where she lived out the rest of her days, passing away in 1962. Number 2. Betty Broderick. Born on November 7, 1947, her story became one of America's most notorious cases of a bitter divorce gone deadly. Betty's marriage to Daniel T. Broderick III fell apart in a very public and messy divorce. She had worked tirelessly to support him through medical and law school, only for him to later leave her for his legal assistant, Linda Kolkana. Bitter and heartbroken, Betty's anger grew. She left threatening messages on Daniel's phone and even sent strange, unsettling gifts to Linda. Then, on the night of November 5, 1989, Betty's rage reached a deadly climax. She broke into Daniel and Linda's home and shot them both as they slept. Linda was killed instantly, but Daniel was left struggling as he tried to reach the phone. Betty later admitted to talking to him as he lay dying. Betty was convicted on 2 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to 32 years to life in prison. Despite parole hearings in 2010 and 2017, she remains incarcerated in California. Her next parole hearing is scheduled for 2032, but for now, Betty Broderick remains behind bars, a reminder of the dangerous extremes that shattered love can drive someone to. Number 1. Susan Wright. Born on April 24, 1976, her case remains one of the most shocking and brutal murders in recent memory. In 2003, Susan tied her husband, Jeff Wright, to their bed and stabbed him 193 times, using 2 different knives. She then buried his body in their backyard and painted the bedroom to cover up the evidence. Susan later confessed to her attorney, claiming that she had acted in self-defense. During her trial, Susan testified that Jeff had been abusive and on the night of his death, high on cocaine. She said she killed him to protect herself and their 2 young children from his drug-fueled rage. But the prosecution told a different story, arguing that Susan's motive was financial, a $200,000 life insurance policy that she stood to gain from his death. In 2005, Susan Wright was convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. An appeal in 2010 led to a resentencing, which reduced her sentence to 20 years after witness testimonies confirmed her husband's history of abuse. Finally, in December 2020, she was granted parole and released from prison, closing one of Texas's most sensational murder cases. And there you have it. 10 black widows who shocked the world with their deadly deeds. Each of these women left a trail of tragedy, and their stories continue to captivate and horrify to this day. Thank you for watching Odd Occasions. If you enjoyed this deep dive into true crime and history, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more eerie explorations, and click the bell icon so you never miss an episode. And let us know in the comments, which of these stories gave you chills? Until next time, stay curious and stay cautious.